Clydesdales, beer tents, rock concerts, parades, rain, and Veterans Day. Thank all our veterans. So these are stalwarts in the audience. Thank you so much for coming. So, I'm Kirk Hallman, the director of the Muskegon Museum of Art. I'm sure you all know. And I just want to thank also Fifth Third for helping to underwrite the cost of this exhibition. And I'm sure you've all seen it upstairs. It's a very literally heavy exhibition. I think the last time something like that came in here like that was Jason Quigno, where these giant granite stones were going in that gallery. So not unexperienced with this. So just a couple upcoming events before I introduce Tiff here. Next week, I think we start the Festival of Wreaths. We'll have some stuff in here. We'll have a decor gallery, you can come. And what's really going to be exciting on January 6th, we're opening a 9-hole, fully playable miniature art golf, which we call mini Archer Golf in the big gallery. So you'll come, play, and then check out the paintings. 10th hole will be a bar, plenty of room for events. It'll be great. And then the other big announcement, which we let the cat out of the bag quite a bit, is coinciding with the premiere of the Downton Abbey movie. We're hosting the Downton Abbey exhibition in June, so it's going to be fun. And we're building a new museum and all this stuff going on, so it's a full plate. So thanks for coming out. Tiff Massey. Personal adornment and community inform the core of Tiff Massey's multimedia interdisciplinary art, expressed through jewelry, sculpture, performance, video, and music. Massey was the first Black woman to earn an MFA in metalsmithing from the Cranbrook Academy of Art and maintains her studio practice in Detroit. Her art has been featured in solo and group shows around the U.S. and internationally and has garnered her multiple awards. She's also been on TV 13 tonight, News 8. We've got some of the best media coverage in a long time we've had for this, and especially with the students coming in. So despite what you see in numbers here tonight, I think this is going to be a very well-received show. She is the winner of the 2021 United States Artist Fellowship, 2019 Art Jewelry Forum, the Susan Beach Mid-Career Art Grant, a 2-time winner of the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation's Knight Arts Challenge, and the 2015 Kritzky Arts in Detroit Fellowship Award. Her recent project, Get Big, combined hip-hop, technology, and digital art to create a fully interactive real-time music video. As a direct response to gentrification in Detroit, Massey has merged her art practice with real estate development and owns several properties in the city. Her goal is one of community development that comes from within the neighborhood and is directed towards the needs of its existing residents. This is one of the longer resumes I've read in a long time, so please welcome Tiff Massey.
So it says what up though. That's how we say hello in Detroit, so I'm gonna say what up though to you. What up though? You guys say it in the same cadence. Come on, where y'all at? Y'all here? So I'm going to try to quickly go through the breadth of my practice and how I got here to show you what you've seen upstairs. And so, I don't know if many of you know that I have a Bachelor's of Science degree. And so I studied biology and chemistry. In the midst of breaking that up, I started taking jewelry classes again. And I tried to merge both of those experiences, especially with my love of making jewelry. And so I created this body of work, probably 2007, 8, which seems like a long time ago. So I created this series of works called Lichen. And so these are all rings that are cast out of silver, and gold leaf is added in interiors, and you may know the popular covering of the rings. They're crayons. And so this Lichen series was basically me trying to create a body of work that simulated a symbiotic relationship between the body and the organism, right? So I'm creating and very fascinated by these little organisms that seem to grow on every surface available outdoors, and trying to figure out how these relationships can happen with the body. And so here are some of the rings on my hand. And so the impetus was for me to show, like, if these were to grow essentially on the body, just how they cover surfaces. And so this was, I don't know if many of you heard from yesterday. I feel like I've been talking so much for the past 2 days. So that's a body of work that I've created prior to going to Cranbrook Academy of Art. And so when I got to Cranbrook, I knew what I wanted to talk about, and it was just about me trying to find my material language. And so what I wanted to talk about is how whites appropriate Black culture but don't want to have anything to do with us. So what does that actually look like in materials, right? And so, yeah, big loaded things. And so for 2 years, I've been investigating that work, and I came up with this. And so there's a variety of necklaces, and this is images from my graduate degree exhibition. And so during that 2-period time, I made Facet, which is upstairs, which is that large scale bracelet that this is my first sculpture, and a sculpture that I learned how to weld on as well. And so each of these necklaces are just talking about the materiality of the work, and then definitely the hierarchy of wealth within it. And so it's just basically me juxtaposing a lot of things that basically are like everyday objects, and trying to create like these, you know, larger wearable objects that symbolize wealth. And at that time too, I was really into fashion photography, and I used fashion photography as an avenue to document my work. And so you see various materiality. There's leopard skin, there's plastic. I don't know, the plastic here is something that I was trying to figure out what is the terminology of. A lot of people know it as maybe like boondoggle or something like that. It like became very popular probably like in the early 90s, and a lot of people made keychains out of it. So here it is that I am trying to bring all of these elements of things that I was exposed to in my youth, and then also still thinking about fur, and this piece is called Helix, just because of how I've oriented the wood into this form. So I think this is the start of when I started to incorporate braids and things into my works. Actually, being in the metalsmithing department at Cranbrook, I didn't do a lot of metal. It was actually quite a bit of fiber, and me just really getting deep into like, what is my material language? I'm totally attracted to a lot of materials, and what is it that I'm going to add to a lot of these conversations that I wanted to have. I'm not a one-trick pony, so you are definitely going to see why I'm truly an interdisciplinary artist. My city, I was curated into an exhibition where you were supposed to use trash, things that were just discarded for an exhibition that was held in Detroit, that was talking about Detroit. And so one of the things that I knew that anybody else that was in the exhibition was going to do was not really transform the trash. It was really going to stay looking like the trash. And so I wanted to manipulate whatever I found to basically describe my city in a different way, because I never saw my city of Detroit as detritus. And so I came up with these wearable necklaces. And so jewelry is basically how I got introduced into fine art. And so you're going to see a lot of the jewelry-based work. and then see the evolution of how I position myself into sculpture and installation. So the found object in this piece are the books that are folded into these wooden I-beams that I created. And so everything here that you see, I made by hand. The silver pieces, there's silver chain that is connecting the pieces. I wove all the elements here. And the only found object are these child books that I found and I folded into the I-beams. In this piece, I can't remember exactly where this building is located, but my Detroit people who are here in the audience, I know you've seen it, going onto 94 into the Lodge. It's this huge industrial building that has been abandoned for the long time, but the glass that they have in the building is this rich, like, greenish blue, and so just passing this building, you just see a lot of it broken on the ground. And so I've collected the glass and I've placed it. And so each of the placements, I'm placing the detritus as a gem. And this piece, the found object, is the caution tape. And so I wrapped it around these copper cages that I fabricated. Go ahead and talk about it, Elizabeth. And in this one I found a broom, and so I took the bristles out. And so it was really important to me that whatever I found was placed as the main focus. And so I tried to keep the industrial elements of Detroit by making all the wood, which is the softest material in all of these pieces, as the industrial element and carving them into I-beams. So je ne sais quoi, you know, playing on terms. And so what it means is like it's nothing like this. It's nothing to describe essentially these African traditional hairstyles. And so at that time, I probably was teaching summer programs, and I was teaching the youth how to make baskets. And so like this same technique to use baskets are the same techniques that have been used for hairstyles, to wrap them in these locks or coils, essentially. I mean, I've even had my hair wrapped in this traditional way. And so this was the start. And so I think this was the first body of work that I created outside of my graduate studies at Cranbrook Academy of Art. And I was really obsessed with that Home Depot orange. And I was only obsessed with it because Cranbrook was under construction and I've seen it everywhere. And so the majority of the works, that accent color you see is the orange. And so then I started to go into other bright colors, this, you know, yellow and the red. And then strictly the red. And these are still the same techniques that I was teaching the youth in camp to make baskets, but I've exploited the technique to make these necklaces that are based on African traditional hairstyles. And so what's underneath these wraps are jute and rope, essentially. So there's that Home Depot orange. And so these are my reference pictures. And so like the Membektu tribe, and so here's the necklace that I made referencing that. Fishtail. And so then I started to layer the objects and think about armor, or to just think about how all these traditional hairstyles that mean so many things, whether it's a hierarchy of status, you're the baddest bitch in the tribe, you know, or your husband has money, you know, it's all of these things. It's like, but what happens when they're all together? And this is what the works look like contemporarily. I've added more necklaces to these objects. There is a fourth one, but it is in the collection of the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. Facet. So, as you can see, that similar to the piece upstairs. And so originally this piece started off as a wearable bracelet, and then I wasn't interested in that scale. The fact that it would change its orientation every time it was placed on the ground. I was really obsessed with that. It seemed like to have an infinite way of being exhibited. And so I wanted to increase its scale, and so I increased the object to 3.5 feet by 10 feet long. And so I was hoping that it would still remain an interactive piece, but my colleagues just respected it, and the only thing that they did was to help me move it from the wood shop to its place for critique. And so this is me documenting its movement to the critique location at Cranbrook. And so as you can see, I'm just walking along, everybody grabs it. And but to see everybody's faces, it just reminded me of like the Passion of the Christ. Not that I was there to witness it, but this is just like the sense of it. It's like you're carrying all this weight, the labor of something. And then there's people who are just watching and spectating. And so I made it larger again to enter it into Art Prize. And this is the piece that is upstairs. And it's 4.5 feet long and 18 feet long, fully extended, and it's made out of square, hollow stock. It is hollow, but it's heavy as hell. And so in 2014, this is my second solo exhibition that I had in Detroit. And it was all about how you felt when you were adorned. And so that's something that a lot of jewelers don't talk about, and I don't know if it's important because they're just selling these designs or whatever. And what accompanied the jewelry in this piece is that I was making these modular sculptures that were made or fashioned after gold bricks, but they're all made out of mild steel. And so these were intended to be my mirrors, until I figured out how much work it was going to take to mirror all these damn pieces. So they remain satin. And so essentially, you got a set of mirrors, and then you got a table, and what was inside of that table were a lot of these necklaces, and this is the necklace that I am wearing today. And so during the opening, this is what I observed. And this is what stuck to me. It's essentially like his investigation of the piece on his body. And so a lot of jewelers, they just don't talk about it. I've never read about it, like how someone feels when they are feeling themselves or feel, adorned, or, what is that feeling when you get a fresh haircut or a fresh outfit? I imagine that is very similar to this. And so to just have it captured, like his investigation of his adornment, and then here's another friend of mine and the gallerist adorned walking into the space, and it's just a very different feeling. This is not how this person walks. They feeling themselves, And so it's just like, okay, so if that is really what the banal point is, then why are jewelers trying to basically investigate this? Like the point in which people feel good. So here are examples, and interestingly enough, the same method that I'm using in these pieces is the same method that I used in the fiber pieces before, the je ne sais quoi. And so I basically have exploited the technique again, and just changed the materiality, and I got a different form. And here are all of the jewelry pieces that were exhibited, along with the bricks that were my mirrors in the space. What up, though?
What up, though?
Hey! So, what year was this? 2015. So 2015, France came to Detroit because they wanted to talk about Detroit and France. They had a triennial in Lilla, and Detroit was its national representation. And so what I did was one day took my jewelry for a walk, so that's me being fully adorned, walking on the grounds, really the riverfront, because at that time my studio was positioned right off the water. And so everywhere I went and the interactions that I had with everyday Detroiters, they wanted to put on the wearables. And so I'm like, shit, let's go, you know, because literally it's just a photo shoot for me. But the fact that you're interested and you want to be involved in the adornment aspect of this, you know, please be a participant. And so, beautiful. So this is Detroit. I just hate that I didn't have enough necklaces to adorn everybody. So I'm walking up, they have a stroller with this dog. And I'm like, oh, you know, the fact that her eyes aren't open is okay. It's literally an entire mood. This is Detroit. This is literally the essence of Detroit. And so I blew this image up big as hell, and I'll show you, in the exhibition, because this was the first time that someone has given me a room to do an installation outside of the gallery, you know. And this is basically what the intended purpose was for the photo shoot, was just to capture me. But the fact that it wasn't about me, and the jewelry made it not about me, was inspiring. And so this is usually how I would adorn myself. So all of those mild steel rings, they're based off of these rings that are in my hand, that are made out of brass. So me and brass been having a love affair since 2014. So this is the installation that occurred in Lilla, and it occurred in an abandoned train station that they basically transformed into an exhibition space, essentially. And so like to just juxtapose that, I mean, we have, you know, Detroit's train station that is being renovated contemporarily right now, but it's only being renovated because Ford Motor Company has basically taken over the development to make it its new home back in Detroit. So I basically added all the elements of what I was working on at the time. Gentrification was big, and so all the windows, I put all these faces with no eyes that are mirrors into these cavities, along with my second quilt that I made, and we will talk about this later. The jewelry is just all elements of my practice in this space. And it would be really weird when people would see me stand and then see me standing in the space. They would do like double takes, like what's going on. So Detroit, Flora, and Foam. So, more Detroit. So with artists moving to Detroit, a lot of artists move to Detroit to claim Detroit just so they can get the recognition of Detroit. And so what I wanted to do was investigate what did Detroit actually really look like, because everybody keeps saying that it looked like shit. And I'm like, this is not a contemporary looking like shit. So then I went to go find historical references to actually try to tell the true story. And so I went to Belle Isle, which is basically Detroit's eldest family member, and it's a park, state park now. It wasn't a state park before. And I took images of weeds to create the motifs in this wallpaper. And so on the white side is basically the heyday of Detroit, which, you know, depending on who you're talking to, they'll tell you Detroit was so fabulous, so fucking fabulous. Until basically the rebellion, which people call riots. And so the white side has all of the heyday imagery of like the building of the Ambassador Bridge, the train station, you know, festivals in Belle Isle, and if you can see, it's hard to tell, but there's like cops fucking tricks and like standing on top of each other on these motorbikes, right? This is not a Detroit that I know. So what I did was create these mirrors that have like these chain link motifs, and it's basically about what side are you actually on, and juxtapose this white wallpaper is the black wallpaper that is printed in the negative, as you can see here. And so the negative is reflected onto the heyday, and this is when Detroit became black, is when the rebellion happened, and it's done in the negative. And here you see a boy who has his hands up, and it's the National Guard that was sent in to basically protect the city. And so all of the floral motifs are weeds that I was documenting from Bella. And this is how deconstructed the chain link motif has, how deconstructed the chain link motif does to a mirrored surface. So quilt codes. I'm thinking I'm only gonna do about 10 of these. So I made my first quilt. Shit, ruler. 14. It was 2014.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
That's my lap. It was 2013.
No, it was 14. I had 2 solo shows that year. You was there. You was there. You left after I was
I'm
gone.
not arguing with you, but
You was there. It was 2014. So in 2014, I had a solo exhibition, which was the Vanity, and then I was doing a Red Bull residency at the same time. And so my gallerist was urging me not to make the same work, because she didn't want to have me make sales where I would just be rewarded and she wasn't getting shit about it. So I created a whole new body of work, and so I created these pieces that are modular, just like those bricks were in that exhibition, but this one was more speaking to fabric quilts, or fabrics that you find in kente cloth, kuba cloth, and then it's me reducing my 3-dimensional works into 2D, and then me referencing other aspects of the Black experience. And so you see the cotton logo, you see the Black Panther as well. And then I only have 1 mirrored panel in here. And so then the second quilt it was all black. And that was definitely because the whole exhibition in Lilla was black. And so I was really on all black everything, regardless if my black ass was gonna be there. So, like, it wasn't gonna be a question whether who made the work. So, 2018, I was commissioned by Facebook World Headquarters to create a piece. And so this is the largest installation that I've made to date. And so what I wanted to do is make the entire quilt out of mirrors. And this is the end result. And since then, everybody and their mama want a quilt. And so this is the one after this. It's quilt code number 4. And so this one was commissioned by the Kresge Foundation, and it's 2-sided sliding doors that basically separate the 2 rooms. And so I'm in the process of creating the 5th quilt, and then the 6th quilt is due in 2024. And so from the hellish experience that I am going through right now with this commission, I think I'm only gonna limit the quilts to 10. So, jewelry. Not satisfied with it just being for the body. And so it needs to be larger. This large. And so, what year is this? And I'm sorry, because the years just blend. 2017?
yes.
Okay, 2017, I was awarded the largest matching grant from the Knight Foundation to create spraying which is based off of my bracelet's design, and it's supposed to be a public installation where people just don't have to spend money, that they can just go and interact with the piece. And I wanted it to be mirror stainless steel. I want to come for Sir Anish Kapoor. I'm going to keep saying it. I'm coming for Sir Anish Kapoor. He's not the only person who can do mirror sculptures. And I wanted this to be the equivalent to Chicago's Cloud Gate. And so being that I wanted to be the equivalent to Chicago's Cloud Gate, that comes with a pretty big price tag. Just like they experienced in Chicago. So I think they expected $3 million for Cloud Gate, and I think they spent like 10 for the beam. You know, and so then me, you know, getting a matching grant for $200,000, thinking like, yo, $400,000 will build this thing, and they're like, no, the labor alone will make this thing $1 million. So it hasn't been installed yet. So you know, holler at your local institutions if you guys want to see this interaction. But I'm ready to see it, you know. But it's on hold. But that's basically the scales in which it is that I think of my work and how I would like the jewelry to be seen and experienced. So in 2018, it was like 4 years between my solo exhibitions. And I created this exhibition called Say It Loud. And so, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the James Brown Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And so this was installed in the Library Street Collective, which is a gallery, popular gallery in Detroit. And so they've been claiming that they've been representing me for a long time before they even gave me a show. And so what I did was flex on them, because that's what I do. I found out today in an interview that that's really my, that's my artist statement. I really wanted to go hard to show like what Detroiters are actually capable of, and to essentially shit on all the other mediocre ass artists that you represent, period. So this was the first views of the exhibition. So you can see elements that you see upstairs. Brass necklace, 39 Reasons Why I'm Not Playing, is based off of necklaces that I made wearable for myself. The gold objects are based off of the metal objects. They are not metal, they are mixed media. And so because they are mixed media, I refuse to let them travel because of the paint is so sensitive. Because it's several layers of automotive paint. And I'm like, man, if this shit gets chipped, what do you do? And so usually what I found with institutions, if they can't color match the stuff just stays how it is, right? And so I just rather it, if it doesn't have to travel so far, it probably just remain in my collection. And so current events, and I hope this is still current, because I'm on some other shit, y'all, all the time. So I started to create these earrings that have always been inspirational to me outside of the Fulani earrings that you see upstairs, are these knocker earrings. And these knocker earrings are influential because they're just very iconic for Black women, period, or the diaspora, or Latinos, period. Like, this is a symbol that everybody pretty much goes to. And so it's like, it needs to be larger. And so these are, well, this piece is called Your Mama's Earring, and it's 12 by 12. So the next thing is to basically make them 2 by 2 is the goal. And so they're all created by Reposé. So I'm representing all of these brass pieces into these large scale earrings, and it's double-sided, so that's a whole new way of working as well. So basically I would have to repeat myself 4 times to make the piece. And so that's the thing that I don't like to do within my practice is repeat myself. So the fact that you have 2 earrings that look the same upstairs is amazing for me. And so then I started to exploit these forms again and to think like, do they need to actually be wearable or to play on the wearable? Just the fact that they have this material language in general, you know, let's take it out of that. And so I started to think about like tintype and how do you see them in old banks. I purchased an old bank, so I'm just like, what would happen if I put these type of relief brass elements all over the place? So once someone asked me, and I always include this into my talks about my practice, you know, what was something that really inspired you, whatever. And so I always go back to this, and I never met Kia Grace. I don't even think the Instagram handle is active at this moment. But she posted this and tagged me one day when I was going through it, because it's not like every day is a beautiful moment in the art world. So, or an artist's life, shit. So, one day I got a tag and I went to it and I'm just like, oh my God, Tiff, you better get your ass up. Like, look what people are doing. And so she was inspired because this is something that I do when I teach inner city school kids. I would teach them, we're only gonna work on one thing. I'm not gonna, you know, bombard you with all these different elements or techniques. We're gonna work on one solitary thing the whole time because I want you to have a realistic idea of what it is to be an artist and to work on, you know, one project for so long, you know. That's not what we're learning in schools. So when we would start, I would ask them, okay, so we're gonna learn about African masks, and so they mean so many different things, and so, you know, I would leave them with what is something that you wanna celebrate. And so I'm bombarding them with all this imagery and things like that, and I don't have a lot of the imagery from my own practice of me teaching this, but every time I would teach a class, the kids would say like textbook shit that you want them to say, like you like coerce them to say it, and they were meaning it because nobody's ever challenged them to just stick to it. And then the fact that they do it, they're really astonished. Also outside of that, the things that they're making, the masks look like self-portraits. And so, all right, y'all have to call me back where I find this information or whatever to show you. But it was really amazing to me that this is what they did. And so this woman saw the work that I was doing. She's based in Chicago. She had a youth program that she was working, and so she taught them about my work, and this is what she had her students do, and she tagged me, and I had a full-on moment. And so I always go back to this, because here it is, something that I'm thinking I'm just inspiring kids in my own network has grown exponentially, and other kids are exposed to this thing, and they're empowered. I mean, this is empowering as photo. So I'm gonna get it printed very soon, very big, to put on my studio wall, so I'll always remember it. And now my voice ain't cracking. So, 2017, because of the hype of Detroit, and so many developers are coming in, so many people from the outside are coming in to like buy or have interest or speculating. I put a fire up under my ass to try to acquire land. The biggest developer in Detroit right now is Dan Gilbert. And I remember going to a Shabbat dinner with friends of mine and saying, excuse me, probably like this is some bullshit, probably, whatever. And so she's like, and her response to me, basically not being game for this one developer owning the majority of the real estate in the downtown. She's like, well, he owns it, so he can do whatever he wants. And I'm like, oh shit, that's really what it is? You know, and so that literally put the fire under my ass to go and not just talk shit about development that is excluding the majority of the people who've been living in this land for the longest, but for me to actually go acquire land myself. And so this is the first piece that I bought. I bought it blind from the Wayne County Land Bank. It is 10 blocks from where I grew up and 10 blocks from where I live now. And I do not remember this space being opened out of whatever 30 plus years that I've been alive. And so when I bought it, my neighbors were very happy that I bought it because I started to basically tend to the land, get rid of the weeds, painted the building, you know, removed a lot of the asphalt to turn it into green space. That was the first things that I could do to the land. It was supposed to be my forever studio. I have enough space. It's an old bowling alley. The whole lot is 30,000 square feet. The building is about 15,000. And so I thought I made it till I saw these high school kids walking around and I'm like, what are they doing? There's nothing for them in the neighborhood. There was nothing for me in the neighborhood. I mean, my mom drove me 45 minutes away from where she lived and worked for me to get a better education. And that's where I got exposed to metalsmithing, even though she wasn't trying to do that. She wanted me to get the better education. And so being that there's nothing like that in the neighborhood, I'm like, these kids need to come over here and make some shit. And so that was the first time that I basically was like, this space is not just for me. I can't share space. It all needs to be community-based. And so then I bought a piece across the street from this space for me, so I can maintain that space across the street. But this is me when I got into the building blind, thinking, what in the hell did I get myself into? And then apparently it wasn't enough because in 2020 I bought an even bigger building that basically intimidated the shit out of me, intended to make artist studios. This building was vacant for 2 years. Half of it is an old bank, the other is an addition. It's probably about 30,000 square feet of building. And then I have 2 parking lots adjacent to the building. This is the total square footage on the main floor. Some parts are 3 stories. Right now I'm focusing on what the community needs. And so I'm thinking about opening up a cafe in the bank portion of the building just to make sure that this building, which never has been accessible to the community, can be accessible. And so basically that's what I did. I flipped my art practice to try to make change in my community.
So you don't have to speak too loudly. If you have a question, raise your hand and I'll pop around with the mic. I remember you told me you were going to have a question for me.
I don't have any questions.
But you're right, it was 2014.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Rula and I, we met because she was running Red Bull House of Art. Which right now they're experiencing their last exhibition because I guess they're just fizzling out of doing like community-based work. Well, I don't want to speak for them, but you know, they're closing their houses essentially. But what those houses have done for the local residents has been amazing. I was able to be a resident 2 times under different curation. So it has been amazing for my practice, for me to be able to expand upon ideas that I've never thought that I would be able to make. Because that was the first time in 2014 that I made quilts, and now everybody and their mama that's an institution wants a quilt. And so I'm forever thankful for that. And then also, 2019 was the last time that I did the residency, and I created the body of work Proud Lady, and a lot of institutions are interested in that work as well.
All right, do we have any questions?
No, I do.
Yes.
You were calling those quilts, but they're not all fabric, are they?
They're not fabric at all.
They're patterned like quilts, but made out of something else.
They're made out of wood. A lot of them are wood, and the first ones were just painted panels of wood that I would get laser cut. And so now the second versions of these that are coming out are all mirrored acrylic and wood. And so you're able to see your reflections through them. They look kind of like a stained glass type of feel. A lot of people think they are stained glass. It has that feeling to it. But I was doing fibers, I was doing like cuss out quilts. So, so I was basically sewing all these cuss words in these very delicate, like baby colors, so I was taking, I was making the cuss words innocent, right? But I was making the cuss words modular as well. So that was really the first of me making quilts, was me making these cuss out quilts. But then when it came down for exhibition, I didn't want the quilts to be fiber. I wanted them to have like some substantial material. And so I laser cut so many wood panels and painted them because I was really interested in this ombre effect, which is still kind of chasing me. We'll see how it works next year when I get into glass. But yeah, that was the start of it.
Do you intend your glass pieces to be massive as well as the pieces upstairs?
Yes. Well, no. Yes and no. So the abundance of them will make them massive. And so what I'm doing right now is making glass beads that are like 8x8, 6x6, different versions, but it's literally the ombre effect from clear to pink that I'm thinking about. And so I'm thinking about lighting, and then I'm thinking about also what is the braided material that's gonna hold the weight of these solid glass beads.
Is stained glass ever a possibility?
No. I know what that work is. I'm not interested. It's some labor that I just really don't mind, and it's just like literally what you gotta do to get to the end result. But then I'm just like, the more and more that I think about, well, because it's always the flex and it's the wow value, the wow factor. And sometimes I'm like, is this shit really worth it? Like, I'm working my ass off like this to get to this end result. So I'm questioning now. I want to do the flex, the big flex. Like, I'm working on a 90 piece quilt, and each panel is 18 by 24. And so that's probably about the equivalence to the quilt that I showed you that I did for the Facebook World headquarters. It's like 9 panels shy of being the same size, but it's going to be oriented differently. It's going to be stacked on top of itself. So that's going to make it a totally different piece. But I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I feel like doing this to myself infinitely. So I think I'm going to cut it off at 10.
I have two questions. Firstly, at Cranbrook, you showed the other students carrying that wooden piece. How are those pieces joined together?
They were screwed together. They were all cut on the angles and screwed together, but then I filled the screws, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question is, excuse me, the metal piece you made, you talked about, when you talked about the piece in Chicago, that you have a picture of it sitting outside. It's a series of coils.
Mm-hmm.
What's the scale of that piece?
Well, so that's a rendering, and so it's supposed to be 30 feet by 20 feet, and I don't know if that's big enough for exactly how I want that bracelet to be positioned. And so that's a rendering of what I won a cash award to, a matching grant essentially, to create. And it was supposed to be installed outside of the Charles H. Wright African American Museum in Detroit, but they weren't interested in trying to help me match those coins. And so it's like, okay, so do I fundraise $200,000 for you as an institution, or do I fundraise $200,000 for me? So I was like battling and like, yo, it'd be beneficial for both of us to actually get this thing going. And so right now I'm talking with other places about trying to see about getting the thing erected.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
So, Tiff, not when you talked about, you talked about laser cutting and different kinds of welding and now, massive scale, polished, stainless. How much is your practice sort of require this constant acquisition of new skills or incorporation of new technologies? Every iteration involves some new materials, and it's not a small thing to tackle.
No, I'm always open to new things, new materiality, new way of working, and things like that. And so, sure, once you start increasing the scale, because once my friends came to see the Fulani earrings that were at the studio, they're like, Tiff, you gotta make this shit bigger. And I'm like, I know. And they're like, yeah, you're gonna have to get cranes because then the pieces have to be formed before. No bodies could form those sheets. And so upstairs the Fulani earrings are 16 gauge, which isn't very thick, but to create something large enough for people to walk underneath those earrings, we're talking about serious plate. And so then we gotta have heat on deck to form it to the right angles, right? And then cranes that can hold that load just for a tack, and so that's whole next level works. And so when I was thinking about the creation of that bracelet, it wasn't going to be something that was going to be done in-house. And so when you see a lot of these large works that are being erected in New York and things like that, there's a company that's called UAP Company, and they're eager to work with me to facilitate trying to create these larger scale works, because it's just nothing that I can do in my capacity in my studio, even though I made some relationships with some boiler makers who have cranes enough to hold this thing. And so it's just a matter of, okay, well, is the budget willing enough to take these boiler guys out their game to help me make this big ass sculpture? But yeah, it's all about the technology and being current and stuff. You need it, especially when you're taking things from being miniature scales, when we're thinking about the body, to large scale.
So I had a question on a similar vein. You talked about your progression through materials changing. You mentioned in answer to another question, you're looking forward to working with glass. So the question is, what materials do you want to explore next? What things do you want to get into?
It's probably the glass piece, and it's just because of the beads. I'm not interested in resins, and I think it's because of the toxicity, and then what do you do with the waste if the thing doesn't work out? And so with glass, it's easy, melt that shit back down, right? See if you can use it again, or it's just a dud or whatever, but it's not as toxic as doing these two-part chemicals and things like that. And so that's something that I think about, is literally the longevity piece within the whole game as well. And so, and to find that a lot of people are looking for glass studios. So in the midst of me, I was supposed to do this whole ass crazy installation for I guess it used to be called SOFA, it's called something else now. And so I was supposed to do this crazy ass installation. I talked to so many glass studios, and in the midst of that, they're talking about how there's this shortage of glass studios, and there's not so many for people to have access to, and how expensive it is. And so I'm like, well shit, I never thought about having a glass studio, but I got land for a glass studio, so maybe we should talk about, particularly collaborating. And so that's really what it is for me. It's I have an abundance of land right now. I don't think it's enough to create a campus, because if I'm saying that I'm trying to create basically a Black Cranbrook Academy of Art, I need a campus. I need an architect. I need the whole shit, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like he got the land, he built him an ignorant house on Cranbrook's campus, and then he probably was driving his carriage to the front of Woodward, showing off and flexing to his friends, and then like, yo, I gotta build myself a museum. And so I'm just like, yo, like, I don't think I need that much money myself personally to flex on my own friends. I think there's enough money collectively that we can flex on each other to make sure that the next generation has this experience. And so that's basically what it's been for me. How can I utilize my art practice and then give back at the same time? That has Robin Hood shit, basically. Not that Robin Hood has been influential to me, but it's like, it's literally what it is. Because a lot of people say, Tiff, like, why are you still in Detroit? Why aren't you in New York? Why aren't you in LA? Like, you would blow up there. And it's just like, is that literally what it's about? Is to be like so popular that you're working the shit out of me, and then my life's work comes and like enters a game, which is the art world, and then y'all arguing over what work exists or not, and then I don't usually have anything for my family. So I don't know, I've been thinking about all of this and how I'm a participant and how I cannot be a participant also at the same time.
Have you played with a 3D printer yet?
I have, and I got some work for it. Especially, I'm ready. Like after seeing all the elements that came together in this show. So usually it takes a lot for things to actually get to me because it's always something else. Like after I leave here tomorrow, I got a big ass fucking commission to finish. So it's like, I don't have time for things to settle and for me to like live with it, right? Like this is a huge accomplishment, but it's not hitting. And it's not hitting because I got way more work to do that's gonna take my attention, and this shit ain't gonna hit and probably till next year, or I get a moment to rest. Or if it does at all, because there's always something else to do. And so yesterday when I set up the exhibition, I'm like, damn, this is a museum show. It's like, duh, it's a museum show. Like, you knew what you signed up for, right? You know? But like, literally the caliber of work and what I'm seeing, it should be in that setting. You know, and it's like, really, I'm shitting on the shit that be on the setting, you know? but no, it definitely hit me yesterday of what it is that I'm actually producing in my lifetime, being from where I come from, where there's no exposure to what I'm actually producing. Like literally, I'm telling you guys, like, why I'm making the things in the gallery is because my dad took me to a jewelry store. Like that's a whole ass big disconnect to actually being a maker, you know, and then saying like, yo, like this is my practice. This is what I do all day, every day, is that I'm an artist. I don't have a full-time job outside of this. And so, you know, now I'm like, I'm working too fucking hard, and what can take care of me outside of me working so hard as an art practice? And so I'm hoping that these developments are the thing that does it.
All right, do we have any other last minute questions? All right, well thank you all so much for coming tonight, and thank you